These are kind of the fun episodes to do because it's right off the cuff and it's speculation, and in the absence of information you get speculation, right? And so some info is kind of out there. It comes from the SE Leaks Discord, and it involves a new ship, the Perseus, and a price of 600 new money, 675 for credit. That is the info that is kind of out there. Now, a lot of people have kind of crossed this over and said, okay, this is what we originally thought was the Odin. It's going to be a gunship. So what are my expectations? Do I think that this is real? I think that it's a reasonable, I think that this is a reasonable expectation. Flight ready? Kind of a big question mark, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was close to being flight ready, considering the gap that we've seen in the production pipeline over the last year. It wouldn't surprise me if it was at least close to being flight ready or currently being worked on at this moment, because when you see the ships that they're working on, it's like, we're working on the Star Runner and kind of working on the Hercules. It's like, okay, and what else, right? I don't think that Squadron 42 ship reworks are eating up all that, production pipeline capacity. So it's not unreasonable, I would say, to assume that this is something that is going to be reasonably close to flight ready. Do I expect it to be a gunship? Yes. My expectation is it is not going to be kind of a gun-based counter to the Polaris, or, kind of an equivalent, but rather than relying on torpedoes, it uses guns. I think that this is probably going to fall because of the price, if that price is correct, if. That sounds to me more like a, kind of a complement, or something that kind of complements the Hammerhead, where the Hammerhead is designed as anti-fighter. I feel that this is going to be something that goes more towards the anti-Hammerhead range of things. It's not something that's meant to fight a Polaris. It's not something that's meant to fight a Bengal. It's something that's meant to brawl with heavier ships and not so much, with the fighters. Something that, working in concert with the Hammerhead would be rather ideal. And, from that point of view, I kind of, if that is the way that it goes, if it goes the way that I'm expecting it to, that's something that I'm fairly comfortable with, because the Hammerhead is decent. The Hammerhead is good in some respects as an anti-fighter ship, but it doesn't really have that kind of oomph, that real kick in terms of weaponry against the bigger ships. It certainly can just blitz them down and wear them down with the turrets, but it's not really meant for that. You want something that's more going to be confrontational with the larger ships, which, especially the non-military larger ships, So I kind of feel like if that's the route that they're going, that makes it a very interesting ship. Certainly for piracy, it makes it a very interesting ship. It could extend your reach as to what you can kind of go after. If it ends up going that way, is this like a situation where it's bye-bye Nautilus and hello Perseus? Potentially. I could see that. I would have to see the ship. The only real downsides that I foresee is that it's kind of being developed in the blind, right? So this is something that has unfortunately received no player input. And that's kind of a recurring problem with a lot of ships in Star Citizen. Of course, there's the counter argument, which is designed by committee means it never gets done or it takes forever, or you have all these competing visions for things. But within that, within that dearth of information that you're going to get from the community, there's also going to be some very valuable feedback. And I think we've illustrated over the years that, yes, there is a deluge of, oh my God, why didn't you do this color scheme? Oh my God, my chair isn't the right pattern of leather or whatever. But, there is a lot of solid information. And certainly I've made videos about, talking about ships and, it's like, let's talk about the Hammerhead for a second. Had a player been there, or had someone in the community been there to intervene in time, we might have gotten gun racks on the Hammerhead. We could have turned that empty center section into an armory and solved one of the ship's biggest problems right now. Someone else could have pointed out, locating the cockpit on the bottom of a ship, especially when we have so many landing sites that open from the top, was not a good idea. And that, that has obviously kind of plagued that ship. And, with the later ships, CIG does tend to correct their mistakes. They do learn. So there is that potential that this could correct a lot of the flaws of the Hammerhead. And so fingers crossed for the people who want that big ship. Another thing that we might see, another thing that could be a bit of a positive, is that, with the Hammerhead, with the release of the Hammerhead, CIG had kind of teased the idea of missions that scale depending on the reward or the ship that you're using. That was something that we had talked about I think about a year ago or something. It came around the release of the Hammerhead into the game that we were going to get missions that scale up in terms of reward and things like that, and there would be missions that you really would have to bring a Hammerhead to. That unfortunately never really materialized. I've actually done a fair amount of exploring the kind of the legitimate side of the bounty missions in my spare time, trying to trigger these higher value missions, and simply it seems that you just get stonewalled at, what is it, like a CS4 or something like that. I haven't seen beyond that. It does offer you player bounties, but beyond that, there's nothing that really would, require a heavier ship, right? You can do most of them with a Vanguard easy enough. And so it is possible that along with this, CIG could finally kind of kick open that door and get a few heavier, much more rewarding missions out there. Certainly for the people out there who, I'm not talking just pirates, but for the people out there who own these capital ships, whether you plan to be a mercenary, law-abiding, or, fighting for whoever's got money or whatnot, and you've got a bigger, more capable ship like this, it is kind of a dead ship in a way. I mean, yeah, you do get to fight with players, but so it's not quite Herald or Reclaimer-esque, but it's still problematic that you really don't have the facilities to earn the rewards that ship should potentially open up. And I think we can all see that, with system security, if you're on the legitimate side, or piracy, a ship like this could certainly open up some doors. It requires that CIG kind of steps up to the plate and make sure that the game has those facilities, and it's not just something that kind of keeps getting backbenched. Another good thing is that, if these prices are correct, if this information is indeed true, given the price and given the expectation of the size of the ship, this may not suffer the space-bound problems of the larger capital ships, and that makes it a lot more flexible and a lot more interesting for a lot of players. So that opens up a lot of doors. And, certainly when you're looking at something, like an Idris, there are limitations. There are, certain logistical problems that you would have to overcome that a ship that is more omni-useful, shall we say, in terms of where you can park it and all that, it could potentially solve a lot of those problems. I mean, it could also be a ship that you could stage out of a place like Grim Hex probably very easily. But once again, that all depends on size and a lot of factors that we just don't know. So it's difficult to make a prediction that way. But given the price, I would expect it to be a ship that has a wide array of potential landing sites, and so it won't suffer the limitations that the much larger capital ships might suffer from, which in the end means that it's probably going to be a ship that you're going to use more often rather than something big and heavy that, you know, requires a certain amount of crew members and is, you know, is much more restrictive on where and when you can use it just because of its, you know, tactical limitations or its practical limitations, shall we say. And that, I think, has the potential to make it a very good ship. It to my mind, it does fit at the top end of that medium segment of ships. And if it is what I kind of think that it is and what a lot of us think that it is, then it could be a very welcome addition to the ship lineup and something that is, you know, certainly needed. The only question is the universe ready for a ship like this? If it actually shows up and they're like, hey, flight ready, you know, which would create quite a stir, because this would be the first time that a big ship like this has really kind of come out and they've just, you know, said, hey, and it works, by the way, you can fly it today. Sure, there are many capital ship owners who would be deeply envious of that. Anyways, that's just my quick thoughts and my expectations regarding the Perseus. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.